This is one I probably shouldn't tell you about, but it's been weighing on me for months. Mayor Thomas Castellano had been running Providence for 6 years when he showed up at my courtroom on a Tuesday morning in October. He wasn't supposed to be there. This was supposed to be handled quietly, behind closed doors, the way these things usually get handled when powerful people make mistakes. But sometimes the system works the way it's supposed to. Sometimes a simple parking violation becomes the thread that unravels everything. Tom was there because he'd gotten a citation for parking in a handicapped space outside City Hall. $15 fine. Nothing that should have brought the mayor of Providence to municipal court personally. He could have paid online, sent someone from his office, handled it a dozen different ways. Instead, he came himself, and he brought 3 lawyers with him. Officer Patricia Chen had written the ticket. She'd been on the job for 2 years. Good cop, careful with her paperwork. When she saw the mayor's official car parked in the handicapped space, she did what she was supposed to do. She wrote the citation. Tom came out of City Hall while she was writing it, saw what was happening, and started talking. That was his first mistake. "Officer," he said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was only parked here for 2 minutes while dealing with an emergency budget meeting. Surely we can work this out without all the paperwork." Officer Chen kept writing. "Mr. Mayor, the handicapped spaces are clearly marked. The violation occurred regardless of the duration." That's when Tom made his second mistake. He started talking about all the good work he'd done for the police department, the new patrol cars he'd approved, the budget increases, the overtime policies. "I've been a friend to law enforcement," he said. "I think that friendship should count for something here." Officer Chen finished writing the ticket and handed it to him. "Sir, the fine is $15. You can pay online or contest it in court." Tom looked at the ticket, then at Officer Chen. Then he made his biggest mistake. "Officer, let's be realistic here. I control the police budget. I sign off on promotions, assignments, equipment purchases. I'm sure we can find a mutually beneficial way to resolve this." Officer Chen's body camera recorded every word. By the time Tom walked back into City Hall, thinking he'd handled the situation diplomatically, Officer Chen was already calling her sergeant. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez had been a cop for 15 years. He'd seen plenty of politicians try to use their influence to get out of tickets. But something about Officer Chen's report bothered him. The way the mayor had specifically mentioned police budgets and promotions felt like a threat. Rodriguez called Detective Lisa Kim from the Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Kim had been investigating municipal corruption for 8 years. When she heard about the mayor's comments, she decided to take a closer look at his finances. What she found in the first week was concerning enough to call the FBI. Tom's bank records showed large cash deposits that didn't match his mayoral salary, and the timing coincided with major city contract awards. The investigation that followed took 4 months and involved agents from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. What started as a mayor trying to get out of a parking ticket became a federal probe into municipal corruption that reached back 3 years and involved millions of dollars in fraudulent contracts. Agent Sarah Williams, the lead investigator, told me later that most corruption cases begin with informants or financial audits. This one started because a police officer did her job and a mayor couldn't keep his mouth shut. "Good morning, Mr. Mayor," I said, when he appeared at the defendant's table with his legal team. "Your Honor," he replied, smooth as always. Tom was the kind of politician who could charm his way through anything. Smart, well-dressed, knew everyone's name, remembered their kids' birthdays. "Mr. Mayor, you're here regarding a parking citation issued on October 8th. The fine is $15. Are you contesting the violation?" One of his lawyers stood up. "Your Honor, Mayor Castellano acknowledges the parking violation.
Some stories stay with you long after the courtroom empties. This one began on an ordinary October morning with something as small as a parking ticket. The mayor of Providence showed up in my courtroom over a $15 fine. He wasn't supposed to be there. This should have disappeared quietly. But sometimes the smallest violations pull a thread that unravels everything hidden underneath.
However, we believe the circumstances warrant dismissal based on... I held up my hand. Counselor, I asked the mayor, Mr. Castellano, are you contesting this citation? Tom looked at his lawyers, then back at me. Your Honor, I was dealing with an emergency budget situation. I believe the circumstances justify leniency. Mr. Mayor, according to Officer Chen's report, you attempted to use your official position to avoid this citation. Is that accurate? Tom shifted in his seat, loosening his tie slightly. Your Honor, I simply pointed out my record of supporting law enforcement. I believe there was a misunderstanding about my intentions. That's when I opened the file the FBI had sent over. It was thick, over 200 pages of bank records, recorded conversations, and witness statements. Mr. Mayor, during their investigation into this incident, federal agents discovered some interesting information about your record of supporting law enforcement. Specifically, they found evidence that you've been taking bribes from construction companies in exchange for city contracts. The courtroom went dead quiet. Tom's three lawyers started whispering urgently to each other, shuffling through their briefcases like they were looking for some magic document that could make this all go away. Your Honor, Tom said, his voice losing some of its usual confidence, I don't know what you're referring to. My administration has always operated with complete transparency. Mr. Castellano, the FBI found $280,000 in cash deposits to your personal bank account over the past 3 years. Deposits that occurred within days of you awarding major construction contracts. Tom was starting to sweat now, despite the cool October morning. Your Honor, those were legitimate consulting fees for work I did before becoming mayor. Mr. Mayor, these deposits occurred while you were in office. You received $45,000 from Rossetti Construction the week after you awarded them the $3.2 million contract to renovate the police station. The same police station you mentioned to Officer Chen when you tried to get out of your parking ticket. I turned to another page, reading from Agent Williams' report. The payment was made in cash, deposited into your personal account at 3 different bank branches over 2 days to avoid federal reporting requirements. Tom's lead lawyer, a man named Sterling, who charged $800 an hour, finally stood up. Your Honor, these are serious allegations that should be addressed in the appropriate federal forum. Counselor, sit down. Mr. Castellano brought this into my courtroom when he tried to corrupt a police officer. We're going to address it here. I continued reading from the FBI file. Mr. Mayor, you received $38,000 from Atlantic Paving 2 days after they won the contract to repave downtown streets. Their bid was $200,000 higher than the lowest bidder, but you awarded them the contract anyway. Tom was staring at his hands now. Your Honor, the lowest bidder didn't meet the technical specifications. Mr. Castellano, according to the city engineer's report, both companies met all specifications. The only difference was price. And the $38,000 you received from Atlantic Paving, I flipped to another section of the file. You received $52,000 from Morrison and Sons Construction right after they got the contract for the new fire station. Morrison's bid was $700,000 higher than Peninsula Construction's bid, but you chose Morrison anyway. Your Honor, Tom said quietly, running a city requires building relationships with reliable contractors.
When Officer Patricia Chin wrote that ticket, she wasn't thinking about power or politics. She was doing her job. The mayor tried influence, favors, even subtle threats. He reminded her who controlled budgets and promotions. But the body camera recorded every word. That moment, meant to avoid embarrassment, became the spark that exposed years of corruption buried beneath City Hall.
Mr. Mayor, building relationships is different from selling contracts. These weren't campaign contributions or legitimate consulting fees. These were direct payments for specific contract decisions. I read from another document. The FBI has recorded phone conversations between you and Anthony Rossetti where you discussed the police station contract. In one call, made 3 days before the contract was awarded, Rossetti asks you, "What's it going to take to get this deal done?" And you respond, "We've talked about this. The usual arrangement." The usual arrangement. Those 3 words hung in the courtroom air like a toxic cloud. Mr. Mayor, these weren't consulting fees. These were bribes. Payment for steering city contracts to specific companies, regardless of whether they submitted the best bids or could do the best work for Providence taxpayers. Your Honor, I've never done anything improper. Mr. Castellano, the FBI has bank records, recorded phone calls, and testimony from 3 construction company executives who have cooperated with the investigation. They all tell the same story. You demanded payments in exchange for city contracts. I looked directly at him. Mr. Mayor, the Morrison project is particularly troubling. Morrison and Sons submitted a bid of $2.8 million for the fire station. Peninsula Construction bid $2.1 million for the same work. You awarded the contract to Morrison anyway, then received a $52,000 payment from them. I looked directly at Tom. That decision cost the taxpayers of Providence $700,000, money that could have been used for school supplies, road repairs, or police equipment. The FBI also discovered that you maintained what they described as a rate sheet for different types of contracts. Police and fire station work required payments of approximately $50,000. Street paving contracts cost $30,000. Smaller projects were $15,000. Tom was shaking his head. That's not accurate. Mr. Castellano, the FBI found this rate sheet on your computer at City Hall. The numbers matched exactly with the payments you received through a shell company called Municipal Solutions, LLC, a company you owned but registered under your wife's maiden name. Your Honor, one of his lawyers said, these are serious allegations that should be addressed in federal court. Counselor, these allegations are being addressed in federal court. Mr. Castellano is facing federal charges, but he's in my court today because he tried to use his position to corrupt a police officer, just like he corrupted the bidding process for city contracts. I set this Tom to pay the $15 parking fine, plus a $5,000 fine for attempting to intimidate a police officer, plus court costs. But I told him the real judgment would come from the voters and the federal courts. As they led him away, Tom turned back to me. Judge, you don't understand the pressures of running a city. Sometimes you have to make deals to get things done. Mr. Castellano, I said, I understand the pressure of doing the right thing when it would be easier to take shortcuts. You just forgot what the right thing looked like. The federal case took 18 months. Tom was convicted on 14 counts and sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, plus $340,000 in restitution. The city suffered significant damage from his corruption. Providence.
What began as a parking citation turned into a federal investigation. Bank deposits, secret payments, contracts awarded to the highest bidder instead of the best one, millions wasted. The FBI didn't start this case with an informant or an audit. It started because one officer refused to bend the rules for someone who believed the law didn't apply to him.
Had overpaid for construction by over $2.3 million. The police station renovation was so poorly done that it required an additional $800,000 in repairs within 2 years. Communication equipment failed regularly. Holding cells didn't meet federal standards, and water damage from poor roofing work had to be completely redone. The fire station had to be essentially rebuilt at a cost of $3.5 million because Morrison & Sons cut corners on foundation work and electrical systems after paying the $52,000 bribe. Fire Chief Santos had to relocate his entire crew to temporary quarters while Peninsula Construction, the company that should have gotten the original contract, rebuilt the station properly. The corruption also created a culture of fear among city employees. Maria Torres from Public Works told investigators she tried to raise concerns about inflated contract prices, but was told to stay in your lane and let the mayor handle contractor relationships. Mayor Rodriguez, who won the special election after Tom's conviction, instituted new transparency requirements and oversight committees. Under the new system, Providence completed major projects on time and under budget, saving taxpayers over $1.5 million in the first 3 years. 2 weeks after Tom's conviction, I started receiving letters from Providence residents. Officer Chen wrote, thanking me for supporting her decision to write the parking ticket, saying she almost didn't cite the mayor, but remembered the law applies to everyone equally. She mentioned thinking about her grandmother, who uses a wheelchair and can never find accessible parking because people take handicap spaces for convenience. Maria Santos, whose son attends school near the police station, wrote asking me to explain to her 8-year-old why the renovated police station looks so run down. She said she told him that sometimes adults make bad choices and other adults have to fix them. Her son asked if the police would get a better building now, and she told him she hoped so. Roberto Martinez, a firefighter who worked at the poorly constructed station, wrote describing how dangerous it was for his crew. They had electrical problems that could have been deadly, and structural issues that made them worry about the building collapsing during emergencies. Every time we got called to an emergency, he wrote, we worried that our own station might collapse while we were gone. Elena Vasquez wrote about her father's construction company, which had tried unsuccessfully to bid on city contracts during Tom's administration, despite 20 years of good work. We didn't understand why until the FBI investigation revealed the bribery scheme, she wrote. Now I know we were never going to get those contracts because we didn't pay bribes. Carmen Rodriguez, who became the new mayor after Tom's conviction, wrote about how his corruption had damaged trust in city government and how important it was to restore accountability. She described seeing contract decisions that didn't make sense and budget allocations that seemed arbitrary during Tom's administration. The city held a special election 6 months after Tom's conviction. Carmen Rodriguez won on a platform of transparency and established an independent oversight committee for all city contracts with public bidding requirements and citizen representation. The new mayor also instituted policies requiring city officials to report any gifts or benefits offered by contractors. All communications between officials and vendors had to be documented and made available for public review. Tom's corruption taught us that we need systems to prevent this kind of abuse, Mayor Rodriguez told me a year after her election. The parking ticket that started this investigation was symbolic. It showed that Tom believed rules didn't apply to him. We've built new systems to ensure future mayors understand they work for the taxpayers. The new oversight procedures worked. In the 3 years following Tom's conviction, Providence completed major construction.
When the mayor stood before me, he was confident, polished, surrounded by lawyers. But confidence fades when evidence speaks. Recorded calls, cash deposits, bribes disguised as favors. Each page revealed how public trust was sold piece by piece. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about accountability and the damage caused when power replaces integrity.
Projects on time and under budget. The police station was properly renovated by Peninsula Construction for $2.8 million, $400,000 less than what Rossetti had charged for substandard work. The fire station was completely rebuilt for $2.3 million without the problems that had plagued Morrison's original work. The construction companies that had bribed Tom also faced consequences. Rossetti Construction was banned from bidding on public contracts in Rhode Island for 10 years. Atlantic Paving and Morrison & Sons both paid substantial fines and agreed to oversight of their bidding practices. Tom served 4 years and 8 months of his sentence. When he got out, he moved to Florida and eventually found work as a project manager for a private construction company. His wife divorced him while he was in prison. That parking ticket Tom tried to get out of, he never did pay the $15. After he went to federal prison, the city wrote it off as uncollectible. $15 seemed insignificant compared to the $340,000 in bribes he had to repay. Tom served 4.5 years of his 6-year sentence. When he got out, he moved to Florida and tried to work as a consultant for small-town governments, but word of his conviction followed him. Most communities weren't interested in hiring a former mayor who had been sent to federal prison for taking bribes. The construction companies that had bribed him also faced consequences. Rossetti Construction was banned from bidding on public contracts in Rhode Island for 10 years. Atlantic Paving and Morrison & Sons both paid substantial fines and agreed to oversight of their bidding practices. But the most important consequence was what didn't happen. The culture of corruption that Tom had created ended with his conviction. The new mayor's transparency policies made it much harder for future officials to accept bribes or steer contracts to favored companies. 3 years later, Providence completed a new fire station built by Peninsula Construction for $2.3 million, $500,000 less than what Morrison had charged for inferior work. The police station was properly renovated by a company chosen through competitive bidding for $2.8 million, and the work was completed on time and on budget. That parking ticket Tom tried to get out of, he never did pay the $15. After he went to federal prison, the city wrote it off as uncollectible. $15 seemed insignificant compared to the $340,000 in bribes he had to repay. Sometimes I think about that conversation between Tom and Officer Chen. He told her that his friendship with law enforcement should count for something. But real friendship isn't about getting special treatment or avoiding consequences for your mistakes. Real friendship is about holding each other accountable, supporting each other in doing the right thing, and building trust through consistent integrity. Tom thought being mayor made him above the law. Instead, he learned that being mayor made his violations of the law even more serious, because people had trusted him to serve their interests instead of his own. Officer Chen did exactly what she was trained to do. She wrote a ticket for a parking violation. She had no way of knowing that $15 citation would eventually expose $280,000 in bribery and save Providence taxpayers millions of dollars in future corruption. But that's how justice really works. Not through dramatic confrontations or grand gestures, but through ordinary people doing their jobs honestly, even when it would be easier to look the other way. Through police officers who write tickets fairly, regardless of who's behind the wheel. Through FBI agents who follow financial trails wherever they lead. Through prosecutors who pursue corruption cases even when they involve powerful people. The corruption Tom engaged in wasn't just about money. It was about trust. Every time he awarded the contract to a company that paid him bribes, instead of one that submitted the best bid, he broke trust with every Providence taxpayer who expected their money to be spent wisely. Every time he chose personal profit over public good, he betrayed the oath he'd taken to serve the people who elected him. But in the end, the system worked. A police officer did her job. An investigation followed the evidence. A judge applied the law equally. A community demanded better leadership. And Providence became a stronger, more honest city because people refused to accept that corruption was just, quote, how things work. I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, sometimes the best judgment is not in the book, it's in your heart. Thanks for listening, and God bless.
The corruption didn't just steal money. It endangered lives. Poorly built stations, unsafe wiring, firefighters working in buildings that could fail at any moment. Taxpayers paid millions to fix what should have been done right the first time. One man's greed created years of harm, until the system finally said enough.